Okay, hi everybody. David Fogel back with you, CEO of the Symphonina Foundation for another Symphonina Foundation podcast. Hard to believe we're into the 50s on these podcasts now. Didn't seem that long ago that we just started, but here we are. And we're back with our first two-time guest, Zach Heyde. How you doing, Zach?
I am doing great. How you doing?
Wonderful. Composer, educator, mentor, all-around good guy.
I appreciate that.
And you're welcome. And the last time we were together, you were a little bit below 100,000 subscribers on your YouTube channel. I just noted you were at 103, so congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a long time coming. 18 years in the making.
Yeah, there you go. I hope you had a good party or something to celebrate.
Oh yeah, I got a nice glass of wine, watched the counter on Social Blade, all the introverted YouTube stuff.
There you go. That's okay. Some counters are worth watching, and that would be one of them. So Congratulations on that. And really, congratulations for everything that you've done to earn it. You've contributed so much to the orchestral world and to people in general and their appreciation of orchestral music, and it's something we appreciate here at the Symphonina Foundation as well. And congratulations on the release of Fear the Call of the Raven's Hollow, which we mentioned before, but it wasn't ready yet. And now it's ready and it's out. And I was just listening again for the third time before we got started here. And super, super good. Congratulations. I do want to ask you, since it is listed and it appropriately as dark fantasy music inspired by fables and forests, what is your affinity to dark fantasy music?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think I've always been really drawn to dark thematic stuff. Some of the stuff I've shared online and to people is when I made the album, I was really looking to go back to how it felt when I first started making music. Because for people who didn't hear the first interview, basically I was really burnt out on the industry. I've been writing a ton of music, additional stuff, just like cranking out music like crazy. And it'd been, I think, 5 years since I'd written an album for myself before I wrote Raven's Hollow. So I was really craving a creative project, but when I went to go start something, the default of what came out of me was stuff that sounded like it was for clients. So it was very like high octane orchestral music, trailery stuff, and it just didn't strike me as something that felt personal. So when I was searching for what would feel like it was mine, I started going back in my head and asking myself, like, what did it look like when I was first making music? What was I interested in? And the answer that came to me was, around, I guess, early 2000, I was listening to Rachmaninoff. I was watching movies like The Matrix. I was reading books like Edgar Allan Poe or Conan Doyle. So I was always into that kind of like broody, introspective style, kind of like existential dread. And that essentially kind of became the theme of the album. So it wasn't so much that I just loved dark fantasy, but it was more a culmination of the kind of work that I really admired as an early teenager.
Yeah. So your second movement of the piece is The Boy Awakens. The first is The Call of Raven's Hollow. So I have to ask, are you the boy who awakens, or is this some other hero if call him a hero in this story?
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of people have been asking me this. They're like, "Oh, you're the boy, right?"
That's a logical question.
And I'm like, maybe. I hadn't intended it to be that way, but it's weird being on the flip of this, because when I've heard artists I love talk about work and some of their backstory, it's hard not to infuse that into the art that you hear them make. And so people know kind of the genesis of why I made this. And it's been weird for me, people saying like, oh yeah, I hear that. And I'm like, really? Because I didn't even intend, it was a subconscious thing. So probably I am the boy. But what's been kind of emerging as I've written the album is I started to actually write a literal story. Like I have typewriter manuscripts of this thing. I've been like drafting out characters, and it's been expanding even after the album's been done. And the boy, I picture being kind of like a Pinocchio-like character who's trying to go into the woods. So it's like a fusion of like Pinocchio, Hansel and Gretel, the classic old fairy tales. But I think that the boy answering his call kind of to go deeper into the woods to remember something is very representative of the journey I went on writing the album.
Yeah. Now, okay, so both Pinocchio and Hansel and Gretel have their very dark moments.
Very much so, yeah.
And I would like to hope that at the end, as I was listening again, it's great half hour of just set everything aside, everybody, when you're going to go listen. Just turn your phone off and just enjoy it and get immersed in it. And I'm wondering is there a light at the end of this tunnel as we're going through? And by the way, there's also an animated film kind of animation loop that goes through it, I guess is the best way to put it. We can talk about that in a minute too,
Sure.
which I think helps give you a flavor of what the composer in this case intends, because otherwise you wouldn't have approved it, right? So
Yeah.
otherwise you can close your eyes and make up your own story about what you're seeing in your own mind. But if you couple the two together, I'm wondering still, Zach, is there a happy ending, or will there be, or what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I left the album open-ended intentionally at the end. There is some kind of loose plot points that I'm hitting based on a combination of what drew me towards things musically, as well as what I was developing on the side with the story. I wouldn't say it's a happy ending now, but I think that there's room for other things. And I kind of tried to hint the last 30 seconds of it, hint that it's not quite the end. And so there's a little bit more to the story. And like I said, it's still being developed. I mean, I didn't expect that, but I'm not really ready to leave the world that I've built. So it's something that I'm continuing to evolve as I go.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see where you take us on
Yeah, there's more to be
the
said
sequel,
for sure.
Shall we say?
That's right.
I noted, and I'll make this note for everybody. On April 3rd, we were recording for we were recording for the Symphonina Foundation for Christopher Reed Symphonina No. 2 with Budapest scoring, and it was kind of wasn't last minute, but it was a not planned recording date because we were planned for later in the month, but they said to us that in order to make that date, we'd have to record at probably 2:30 in the morning Pacific time, which less than ideal.
That's about right.
Yeah, so we have managed to do better than that with them. More like 6 in the morning or 7 in the morning even. But 2:30, I mean, we would do it if we had to. But I was traveling with my wife, and we were on vacation in Maui the week of that April 3rd. And I said, okay, let's do it. We're going to just do it on the 3rd because we can get a better time. And so I log in to check to make sure that everything is working appropriately. And there's Zach. He's recording with them. And I you always want to respect people's privacy and not sit in and listen to what they're doing. You just check, and then you everything's working, and then you hop off. But I had a feeling this was going to be the last bit of recording that you were doing for this work here. And just checking, of course, on the credits, there is reported by Budapest scoring. So I want to ask you, how much prep did you do in prepping your score for them? How does that all work for you? We can compare if we want how it works for us too.
Sure.
And what's your experience working with them? And what are some tips that you might have for other people who want to work either with Budapest scoring or any other live orchestra?
Definitely. Yeah. So I think I've worked with Budapest before. I've worked with a couple orchestras before, not extensively, but it's always the dream, I think, for a lot of composers who love orchestral music to work with live musicians. So thankfully, I had experience working with orchestras before, and I was prepared for this one. That said, I did have some kind of ambitious goals. I had 3 tracks that I really, really wanted to have done with the orchestra, and you have a net recording time with these shared sessions of 25 minutes. So It's tight. And I think what people who are new to this don't realize is just how expensive these sessions are per second. I mean, I did the math, and including orchestration, assuming you're hiring out for orchestration, you're getting pretty close to about $1 per second of time. And so it really adds up, and every second counts. So when I was preparing for this, I'm at a point now where I just don't want to do the orchestration part myself. I've done it in the past, but it's a thing in itself. So I delegated to someone who I've worked with who is really great. His name's Filippo Landi. He's worked with Budapest a lot too. And basically just asked him, all right, I want to do these 3 tracks. Am I nuts? And if I'm only a little bit nuts, then what should I be aware of? What is the absolute bare minimum of stuff we can get for this? And very cleverly, what he did was created some first pass, second pass stuff. So for people who are listening, if you anticipate that the orchestra might struggle with some things that aren't as necessary for the piece, but they're kind of more auxiliary, then a good orchestrator will put that on the back end of the music. So they'll put that as a second pass as opposed to baked into the first. And that way you can ensure you get all the core material in your first pass. And if you have time afterwards, you can do the second pass. So that's what he did for me. The night before, I was basically running through the session in my head. So I was just picturing how it was going to go, reading through the score, anticipating what are the spots I think they're going to get stuck on. And when the session came, it's there is no time to spare. So you get your 2 takes, 2, 3 takes. If it works and you need more, like you just move right along. You don't have to waste time with compliments. Like they're professionals. You say, good job, let's move on. And I think that what I would say specifically for people who are doing this is if you know the orchestra you're working with, be mindful of their strengths and weaknesses. Every orchestra, and particularly orchestras, whether they're based in Europe or the US or anywhere, they have different strengths and weaknesses. And it's really good to have a sense of that. So talk to people who have worked with those orchestras and ask them, what do they do really well with? What do they struggle with? And make sure if you're going to do stuff they struggle with, that you buffer extra time for that, because it often takes quite a few takes for the things that are more challenging for them.
Yeah, and some of those things might be, of course, high tempo, fast movement things. They're sight reading
Yep.
everything. So if you give them something that's not in a super easy key the first time, let's say you got, I don't want to say some people say all keys are equal if you just practice them well enough, but and that's true. That's okay. I give you
Fair.
that. That's fair. But you know what I mean. I think there's some things for violins that are easier than others, and there's some things for horns that are easier than others. So you have to kind of think about that, and then also what you expect from intonation and timing as you're gonna put some of them through the high range of their instruments, perhaps other things like that. So, but that's all good. So when you talk with your orchestrator, is he taking your original score that you created and then rearranging it essentially as an arrangement, or is he going from your DAW to create the score? What's the process there?
So in this case, I actually have not had notation software on my computer in about 3 years, which is crazy for me because I used to do copyist work. So I had all this. They're still in my fingers somewhere probably. But I made a choice when I was getting deeper into additional to just kind of try and really delegate that. So he takes everything from the DAW, and what I still will do in the DAW is, he didn't create. This is the funny thing about orchestration is it really is so much of an it depends. Like, because with some orchestration, people will be, I made a piano sketch, turn it into orchestra. And with other people, it's like, I know exactly what I want. Just make sure it works for live players with the ensemble size that we have. And mine was a bit more on the second one. So I wrote out individual parts like for viola, violins, cello. And then basically what Filippo did, because he's smart, is like he recognized which lines would need a bit more support with certain things and had some nice doublings, some divisi when it was necessary. He basically took his expertise with orchestration and with Budapest to make sure that what comes out of their instruments sounds as close as possible to the strength that I had in my mock-up.
Yeah, and that's then do you get to listen to his mock-up of your mock-up essentially before you deliver it to Budapest ahead of time, or how does that go for you?
In this case, I didn't. He probably could have done that for me if I'd asked for him. But because I've worked with him before, I just trusted, and I used my eyes and my ears on my mock-up and just looked. And thankfully, I think because having experience doing orchestration and copyist work, I'm able to look at it and have a clear idea of kind of where he did this. So I remember looking through and saying, "Oh, that was really smart." Like that's a great note. Like I wouldn't have thought of that. Mm-hmm. So he's got the experience to do that, and I've just hit a point where I just trust him, and if he's got it, I'm like, he's got it.
That's good when you got somebody like that you have on your team that you can just kind of know, like as a tennis doubles player, where they are on the court without looking.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
That's cool. Let's talk about the mixing and mastering. You had Will Chen do that. Mm-hmm. And I guess my first question would be, did you feel like you could have done it yourself if you'd wanted to? I think you probably could have, but you chose to delegate that too. So
yeah, I have done mixing in the past. When I did my last album, Frostfell, I mixed and mastered that myself, and I can be really picky with mixes, my own mixes especially. So it was interesting delegating this, but I kind of felt like I wanted to give myself that personal challenge to just let it go and see what it would look like in someone else's hands. And I'm really glad I did, because man, do you learn where the gap is between stuff that you kind of learn on your own and a real expert. Will is an expert. So I went to his, well, first of all, I sent him the stuff and he was really fired up. He's a super interesting mixer. Like he just really takes to heart the story. And that's something I've never experienced with a mixer before. He was asking me all about the story and asking me, what's the environment here? And how big is the space? And like, is this a positive beat in the story or a negative beat. And as I was telling him these things, I'm like, what is he going to do with this information? And it was really influential to his mix, because when I went to his studio, he was showing me what he was doing. He had made some custom reverbs that he said he wanted to sound like wood, like as if you were inside of a tree trunk. Or when I told him that there was a montage sequence, he would scoop back on the reverb so that it would feel a bit more like a commercial mix as opposed to being baked into a space. And so he was doing all of this stuff I never would have remotely thought to do from an artistic perspective with the mix. And also, as a side note, monitors really influence your perspective, because I thought my mix sounded pretty good. And then I went to his studio where he's got the audio treatment and and when he played some of the early pieces, like the subs just like blew my eyebrows off. Like they were so out of whack. And I was like, did I really send you this? He's like, yeah. So it was well worth getting someone to do a really, really good few passes and do the mastering to get it to sound the way it does.
And then when you close that loop with Will or anybody like that, does that give you more impetus to do it next time yourself with what you've learned, or does it give you more impetus to not do it yourself and hand it to them to get everything that they can get?
I think in my case more the second one now, because I've gotten a taste of that and I've seen just how big that gap is. I mean, there were little bits and pieces, like there's some mixed things that I said, wait a second, like what was that? How did you do that? And he would show me, the plugin or something he used, and I'd go and buy the plugin. So there was little bits and pieces I grabbed, but I mean, with these guys where they're that much experts, even if I could do it the way he did, it would take me 10 times as long. So I'm kind of in a time management perspective. I'm like, I'd rather spend time writing the music now and getting someone really good to do the mix.
That's excellent. Okay, well, let's go on to the animation. You have a company, Tier S, which I hadn't heard of before. So how did you find them, and what instructions did you give them to develop the animation that goes with your music?
Yeah, so the whole outsourcing to orchestration in Budapest and the mixing was kind of in the spirit of part of this album, which was I really stoked into the creative space of making the album, and I've been very controlling over my own work for a long time. I think a lot of composers tend to be this way. It's like our babies. But in this album, I really wanted to invite other people in, other creative input. And so the people I started reaching out to were people that I had just worked with as clients or in the industry. And TRS, up until that point, had actually been hiring me for things. So they've done some stuff for like esports commercials, basically like various games and things like that, and they're great. They do really, really good work. And so I was like, man, it would be kind of funny if I flipped it on them and said, hey, actually I'd like to hire you guys. Turns out animation's really expensive. Like really expensive. So initially our first call was like, they're like, listen, you're gonna have to tell us what you can afford, because like we can adjust our scope based on your budget, but like it's animation's ludicrously expensive, and they delivered far more than what I was able to spend with going out of pocket. But yeah, they did great work. They were asking me same stuff about the story. They were taking some inspiration for some existing pieces like Over the Garden Wall, which is kind of another dark Pinocchio thing, or some games like Lies of P. Limbo, it's another video game. And yeah, they honestly, like, they really just delivered V1, and it was pretty much exactly what I was looking for. I thought they were going to send me one environment, which was just going to be like a scroller of the forest, but they wound up sending me like 7 environments of him going through all the different spaces, and it was super evocative and helpful just to kind of get a little variety visually.
And I think then the trick then for you, I suppose, is to ask, do each of those 7 environments match the music as you would like it at that time, or did you have to do any editing around that, or would you do any editing around that to bring out particular things a little bit more or less?
Yeah, so with the animation that's up, I basically just kept it the way it was, because I wanted to just see like how it would interact without trying to influence it. So there's, I don't know, maybe 20-second loops of each of the environments, and they cycle through over the 30-minute period. So it's not intended to be like direct to score. But what was interesting, and this is what was fun about getting other people involved, is I had my ideas. of what I thought the world would be or certain things. And as each collaborator came in, they came up with some environments or some ideas that I hadn't even conceived of. Like they had a mushroom spore ground thing that, I mean, I gave them no indication of that. They just thought it was cool. And now because the world is something that's still kind of living and breathing rather than just this album, it's now making me ask questions like, where would that environment be in the world that I created? And what's the purpose? What do they experience in that world? And it might trigger some music. So it's this crazy thing with world building where when you get other collaborators in, it's just so dynamic. It stops becoming I'm the puppet master of this thing and I'm delegating out to other people. And it starts becoming we're just like in this think tank where all the ideas just bounce off of each other and create new ideas. So that's what I've loved about working with them and all the other people on this album.
And I suppose it could inspire you to write other music, but you have to say you're done at some point. So in your case, the music was done.
Do you?
You do. You do. Well, you better. Otherwise, we never get to hear anything. So
yeah, that's fair.
We got to release it at some point. So, but it is interesting, I think, to go from music to animation instead of film to score.
Yeah.
And I guess what's your recommendation for other people who might want to do that? They've got music, they've got a vision for what the film might look like, and they need to go interact with an animation company or some sort of film production company. Having worked with that a little bit now, what kind of things would people be wise to think about?
Yeah, it's kind of a new space that I'm navigating, so it's something I'm learning as I'm going. Like I really haven't seen people do, world building with music as the genesis. It's often music being something to support the world building. So this is a weird space for me to be in. What I'm trying to do personally is approach these relationships as what they are, which is relationships, and not treating it as like needing to delegate as the owner of a company who is like hiring people. Because I mean, we're asking a lot of people like animators. That's a huge ask. And I mean, sure, it helps to be financially equipped and resourced to do that for sure. But I think what I've been noticing is when I stay open-minded and I start just really looking around in my circle for people who are doing cool things and things that I resonate with, just tapping into that as the source of resonance to connect with people and just saying, I really like what you're doing. I'm doing similar things. I would love to just keep in touch with you. Often projects and collaborations emerge naturally from that. And what I notice is a lot of composers tend to, because they really, really want to like score a picture or something, they tend to have an energy of like needing it and an energy of positioning themselves as someone who can be hired right out the gate of meeting somebody for the first time. And my approach has always been, it's a relationship. Start with it as a relationship and let work emerge from the relationship rather than trying to force work upon it.
Totally agree with that, by the way. Just depends on where you are in your career, I suppose. And
of course,
and how quickly you want to get somewhere, wherever that somewhere is. But to me, I think the relationships are getting somewhere in and of themselves, right? I mean, I've had the joy of meeting hundreds of people, thousands of people, probably over the last 2 years of Grammy music submissions and things like this now. So, I mean, it's been wonderful in and of itself, regardless of any projects that might come out of it. But I guess one other question on the film side of things, when we start talking about the cost of animation and all of that, is there any financial model that you know of in your mind where someone would be able to say, okay, I'm going to go raise the funds for this animation for 30 minutes of Call of Raven's Hollow and release it as a film that would be released to theaters or Netflix or whatever the venue would be that would actually make it be a reasonable thing to do?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of in my pipeline of something that I'd like to do myself in some capacities, bring it to visuals. How one goes about doing that, I think, is challenging. I mean, yeah, you have to raise funds for sure. I mean, I believe, as far as I know, a lot of the people who do this, because I've worked with on the flip end of this of animators raising funds, they'll crowdsource it as much as they can. But in order to do that, you either need to have a lot of organic reach to begin with people who are willing to back your vision, or or you have to do some really aggressive marketing, which requires content and paid ads and all sorts of things. And so it is doable, but that's where I think a lot of this, personally, like in my experience, seeing all this stuff as a long game, first and foremost, I think is really important, so that you do it right and you also have realistic expectations. And that's where I think the relationship thing is helpful, because I've noticed that the relationship stuff is as close to a shortcut as you can get with this. I mean, you can try and ask a stranger for money for a project, but building that trust takes time. Or you could start with people in your network or your circle or your family or your friends who already know and trust you, and use that as your launching pad. And those people will be much more willing to offer their support and help for you earlier in your career and as you're growing your projects.
Yeah, that all sounds like great advice, actually. So, all right, Zach, that's in the rearview mirror. Kind of, still in the front view mirror, really. But what if there's a front view mirror? But it's still in our forefront, I guess we should say. But before it disappears in the rearview mirror and out of sight, what are you working on next?
I thought I was going to be done with the world of Raven's Hollow, but it's been interesting. Since I've been done with it, I've found myself wanting to come back. The call has not fully been answered for me. So what I've been doing is I'm just treating this world like it's still alive, and that the album that I created was the first door into the world and into the characters. But it's been expanding very quickly. Like, I've started to realize that the villain in the story that I've created has a backstory that has not at all been explored. And I've realized, like, I've never addressed where the girl in the story comes from. And I've never addressed, why the forest lost its power in the first place. There's so many plot points that I have not addressed internally that it's actually making more sense for me, instead of starting a whole new project, to just continue this one. So what it's going to look like, I'm in the process of doing loose crowdfunding just to keep the world alive. I launched a Patreon for it. It's where I'm sharing some like uncut bits, the recording session with Budapest, just behind the scenes looks at me making the world. Yep. And I think tactically what it'll start to look like is more albums, or at least more EPs, stuff that's still living in that space of Raven's Hollow, but addressing some deeper points of the characters and the story plots.
Well, that is exactly what I wanted to hear, Zach. So that's,
okay, good. I'm glad.
that's super. And I just want to re-encourage everybody to go to YouTube or whatever your favorite streaming platform is. But for me, YouTube was great because I got to watch the video and check out the Call of Raven's Hollow. And Zach, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
You can go straight to my website, zachheyde.com. There's a bunch of links there, depending on what you're interested in, and then we can chat. All
right, Zach, we're going to listen to some more of your music on the way out. Thanks again. And we wish you all the best. And if there's anything we can do to be of help, you just let us know.
Thanks so much, David. Yeah, it's a pleasure.